Ronald Reagan, the full life story of the 40th U.S. President. Early life and childhood, 1911 to 1930. Ronald Wilson Reagan was born on February 6, 1911, in Tampico, Illinois. His parents, Jack Reagan and Nell Wilson Reagan, raised him and his older brother, Neil Reagan, in a modest household. His father, an Irish-American shoe salesman, struggled with alcoholism, while his mother was a devout Christian who greatly influenced Reagan's values and optimism. As a child, Reagan moved frequently due to his family's financial struggles. Despite these hardships, he developed a strong work ethic and an interest in storytelling, acting, and sports. Education and early interests. Attended Dixon High School, excelling in football, acting, and public speaking. Went to Eureka College, a small liberal arts school in Illinois, where he majored in economics and sociology. Was active in student government, theater, and sports. Hollywood career, 1932 to 1964. Radio announcer. After graduating in 1932, Reagan worked as a sports radio announcer, calling baseball games for the Chicago Cubs and other teams. His ability to recreate plays from telegraph reports made him popular. Becoming a movie star. In 1937, while covering the Cubs' spring training in California, Reagan took a screen test with Warner Bros. And signed a contract. Over the next 2 decades, he appeared in over 50 films, often playing heroic or all-American roles. Notable films. Nut Rockne, All-American, 1940, played the legendary football player George Gipp, inspiring the famous line, "Win one for the Gipper." King's Row, 1942, a dramatic role where he played a man who wakes up to find his legs amputated, delivering the memorable line, "Where's the rest of me?" Military service in World War II, 1942 to 1945. During World War II, Reagan enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces but was barred from combat due to poor eyesight. Instead, he worked in Hollywood's first motion picture unit, producing training films for soldiers. He rose to the rank of captain. Political awakening. In the 1940s, Reagan was a liberal Democrat and supported Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. However, as president of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, in the 1940s to 1950s, he became involved in the fight against communism in Hollywood. This experience shifted his views toward conservatism. Political career begins, 1964 to 1976. Switch to the Republican Party. By the early 1960s, Reagan formally switched to the Republican Party, embracing limited government, free markets, and anti-communism. A Time for Choosing, speech, 1964. In 1964, Reagan gave a speech supporting Republican presidential candidate Barry Goldwater, called A Time for Choosing. It was a passionate defense of conservative principles and launched him into national politics. Governor of California, 1967 to 1975. In 1966, Reagan ran for governor of California and won in a landslide. As governor, he focused on cutting government spending and balancing the budget, tough law and order policies, cracking down on student protests at Berkeley, tax cuts and deregulation. He was re-elected in 1970 and served until 1975. Presidency, 1981 to 1989. Winning the 1980 election. Reagan ran for president in 1980 against incumbent Jimmy Carter and won by a landslide. His campaign focused on reviving the economy, restoring American strength, ending the Cold War. He was inaugurated as the 40th president on January 20, 1981. Key achievements as president. 1. Economic policies, Reaganomics. Reagan introduced supply-side economics, known as Reaganomics, which included tax cuts to boost investment, deregulation to free businesses from government rules, cuts to social programs to reduce government spending, massive military spending, which increased the deficit. Results. The economy boomed, but the national debt tripled. Unemployment dropped from 10% to 5%. Inflation fell from 13% to 4%. 2. Surviving an assassination attempt, 1981. On March 30, 1981, just 2 months into his presidency, Reagan was shot by John Hinckley Jr. outside a Washington hotel. The bullet hit his lung, missing his heart by inches. He nearly died but recovered quickly, using humor even in the hospital. This boosted his popularity, as Americans admired his courage and optimism. 3. Foreign policy and ending the Cold War. Reagan took a hard stance against communism and called the Soviet Union the evil empire. Massively increased military spending, including the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, nicknamed Star Wars. Pressured the USSR economically by forcing them to keep up with US military spending. Met with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev several times, leading to the INF Treaty, 1987, which reduced nuclear weapons. Berlin Wall Speech, 1987. Reagan famously challenged Gorbachev with the words, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." By 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, marking the end of the Cold War. 4. The Iran-Contra scandal, 1986. One of Reagan's biggest controversies was the Iran-Contra affair, where the US illegally sold weapons to Iran. The profits were used to fund anti-communist rebels, Contras, in Nicaragua. Congress had banned funding the Contras, so this was illegal. Reagan claimed he didn't know about it, but the scandal damaged his credibility. Post-presidency in final years, 1989 to 2004. Retirement and Alzheimer's disease. Reagan retired to California after leaving office in 1989. In 1994, he announced he had Alzheimer's disease, saying, "I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life." His wife, Nancy Reagan, became a strong advocate for Alzheimer's research. Death and legacy. Ronald Reagan passed away on June 5, 2004, at the age of 93. His funeral was attended by world leaders, and he was honored as one of America's greatest presidents. Legacy. How he changed America. Helped end the Cold War. Revitalized the US economy. Made conservatism mainstream in American politics. Known as the Great Communicator, for his ability to inspire people. Despite controversies, Iran-Contra, debt increase, Reagan remains one of the most influential presidents in US history.